today. I'm not sure whether you all have the student attendance system punya apa benda tu. Tapi tak apalah, just for me just to check. Ke mana letak ni? Okay. Tak apa nampak. Dah on ke tak on? Okay, on. Okay, dah ada yang jawab pun. Baru je nak tengok setting dia macam mana. Okay. Today we are going to go into a new chapter in which we are going to explore the different accounting theories that we have. Okay, but we are going to focus only on two major theories for at the moment. Okay, before we discuss further on several other related accounting theories. So you can refer to the notes while I'm explaining about the theory. Okay, so harap tak ada yang tertidur lah ya. Okay, saya pun rasa letih pula tu kenapa. Okay, last week punya lah letih, lepas habis kelas tak larat dah nak masak nasi. Apa buka. So tapau je. Okay. So this is chapter 2. The title is Formulation and Verification of Accounting Theory. Why it has the word verification? Sebab apa? Sebab in order for accounting theory to be proven, it must be tested and the test usually is done scientifically. Kejap. Mana dia punya? Okay. Sorry, dah lama tak guna ni. Saya rasa macam setting dia lari lah ke tidak, saya boleh je terus conteng kat sini. Okay. So as I said before, sambil bercakap sambil nak buat kerja, jadi dia ada perkataan formulation and verification. Okay, mana ni? Kenapa ni ya Allah Tuhanku, sakitnya hati saya. Okay, formulation and verification of accounting theory. Tak apalah, you tengoklah macam mana saya boleh buat ni . Tadi saya dah test dah macam okay. Okay, so for the first part, these are the learning outcomes. We are going to look at or revisit the roles of accounting theory, although you have learned a little bit in chapter 1 regarding what is the purpose. So what are the purposes, what are the objectives of learning accounting theory, okay. Because maybe you have, you thought to yourself that, accounting theory is something that is very dry, is a dry topic, and it doesn't really contribute to the development of you as an accounting student. But you may get it wrong. The accounting theory actually proved to have a lot of contribution or significant influence on the development of an accountant actually, especially in terms of his or her career. Okay, next we are going to look at the approaches to the two approaches that we have. Ya Allah, stress ni saya. To the formulation of accounting theory. Okay. And then we are going to look at the development of accounting theory. Minta maaf lah, saya mesti contek kat tempat lain, dia keluar kat tempat lain. The development of accounting theory and the classification of accounting theory that we have. Okay, so now let's revisit the definition of theory. Okay, as we have learned in the previous week, okay, when we talk about theory, we view theory as something that is systematic. Okay, it must be systematically done. It must be coherent. It must align. Okay, so it is a coherent set of hypothetical, conceptual, or even pragmatic principle. That at the end of the day, it forms the general framework of reference for any field of inquiry. So basically it becomes the guidelines, it becomes the general frame of reference. Why it says general? Because in certain situation you cannot really specify the effect of the theory on certain, let's say, human behavior or the outcome of certain phenomena. So that's why dia ada perkataan general tu kan, hanyalah sebagai kita punya general frame of reference saja. Okay, so that is the definition provided by Hendrickson, which is one of the accounting scholar. Okay, back in the 1970s. This characteristic here define the quality of a theory, which means that it must be logical, it must be systematic, it must be structured, it gives you the framework, and most importantly, it must be evidence. So supported by evidence, and as I said before, in most of the cases, it is supported by scientific evidence. So what theories are not? It is not a guess, something that you made out of the blue. It's not a hunch, not a speculation. It's not just something that is just random. So this does not define the characteristic here does not define theory. Okay, so by looking at these different features or qualities that we have that we can relate to theory, it can be said that a theory is a related. So because it is a coherent concept kan, so it is a related set of concept and principle that explain about something that happens. So it is explain about a phenomena. Sorry, okay, in which the objective of looking at the phenomena or whatever event that you're looking at, the objective is to explain why the things happen, and then based on that, we are going to be able to make prediction about the phenomena if that phenomena happens again in the future. So that is basically the purpose of a theory. So ni ada lagi lah explanationnya. You boleh tengok. Okay. Logical flow of argument, again dia ada perkataan logical tu maksudnya systematic, structured. So dia ada dia punya principle dia yang tersendiri. Okay. So again, what makes a good theory? A theory must be clear rather than muddle, meaning ambiguous lah, tak tahu kan. It must be precise rather than vague. It must be accurate rather than inaccurate. Ni banyak lah. Ni ambil daripada mata-kata kan. It must be coherent, it must be consistent, logic, complete, fair, objective. So these are the characteristic of a good theory, as opposed to the other side, which does not indicate that the proposition or the argument is a good theory. So in most circumstances, a theory is considered to be good. Okay, is considered to be good, although this is not necessarily the prasyarat, not necessarily the prerequisite, if it satisfy these two requirements. Because some people can argue, if you look at the literature, if you are interested in learning more, saya just nak bagi tahu sajalah. So if we want to define, a lot of people would argue that a good theory consists of these two characteristics. Number one, it precisely describes a large class of observation by using the model. So one of the famous theory that maybe you have learned about this theory, Herzberg theory of motivation. When it was first introduced, nak tulis a theory of motivation kan, Herzberg. When it was first introduced, a lot of people criticize the theory because why? Because the theory is based only on 13 observation. Dia hanya tengok 13 orang saja. This 13 workers comprised from the upper level to the lower level. Okay, so macam-macam lah yang nak gelarnya, ada accountant sekali dalam sampel tu, tapi hanya 13 orang. So at that particular time, it was not considered to be a solid enough argument in order for the theory to be proposed. Tapi anyhow, they keep on refining, adjusting, improving the theory, so they make the observation larger and larger. So at the end of the day, what happened that the theory is considered to be a good theory because it applies to a large class of observation. And as a matter of fact, it can go cross culture as well. So dia buat observation tu contohnya di US, and then bila dia apply di Asian country, because Asian and Western we have different cultural background kan. So when the theory applies to a different setting, the theory can still be considered to be valid. So that is considered to be a good theory. So the second characteristic is that Sorry, saya nak ni. It makes definite prediction about the result of future observation. So again, if we were to apply the theory into different situation, if the result that we get is consistent from, let's say, setting A to setting B to setting C, then we can say that this is a good theory. Okay, itu dia punya argument lah. Although there are other arguments regarding what considered to be a good theory. So maksudnya dia punya level of acceptance tu can be considered high in order for a theory to be considered as a solid and good theory. Otherwise dia macam huha-huha je lah. Maksudnya hanya kita punya andaian saja. It's not proven. Okay. So when we zoom in into accounting, we can say that theory and accounting not only applies to any grand theories, but mind you, as I said before in the previous class, accounting, we don't really have our own theory, unfortunately. So a lot of our theories in accounting are actually based from other field, other field. The most that we adopt or borrow the concept is from the economics theory lah. And then towards the end, we apply a lot of sociological theory, psychological and sociology theory. So that's why when we borrow the concept, we apply in the context of accounting. Tapi ini argument from one of the scholar, saya tak ingat nama dia, ada saya tulis kat belakang kotak set saya. It not only applies to any grand theories contoh theory of gravity kan, so that is considered to be a grand theory, but the theory seek to inform us about the generalizable issues applied to any framework that help us to make sense of aspect in the social world in which we live in. Even if the theory is only useful to explain about certain aspect of our social life. For example, why certain firm choose certain accounting method as opposed to another. Kan kita ada contoh yang paling klasik adalah depreciation method kan. So depreciation, we have straight line, we have reducing balance. So what triggers one company to choose reducing balance over straight line method? So in that sense, theory can also be applied in that particular situation. So it helps to provide a structure, it helps to provide explanation with regard to the choices that we made. So in that sense, theory satisfy the first objective, which is to explain. Kan, because it help provide that explanation regarding the choices that certain firms or certain managers made. And then based on that and also the trend, the theory can help any organization or anybody who is interested in using the theory to apply the theory in certain setting or certain circumstances to help them predict about something or any event that is going to happen in the future. Jadi it satisfy the second objective, which is to help predict about any accounting activities or any accounting events that they are interested in. Okay, so because of that, you can see that different theories of accounting will have different objective. So because one theory macam sama lah juga, one size does not fit all. So you cannot use the same theory to explain about different phenomena. Okay. So ni saya ambil daripada ni. Saya nak sebut nama dia pun tak reti ni. Li Wilin. Kan macam tu lah kot 2003. When she talks about the importance of theory and how theory is applied in our daily lives. So dia nyatakan dekat sini sebab life itself is ambiguous, life itself is uncertain. Most of the time lah kan, because life is uncertain kan. At the end of the day, kita tak tahu sama ada we are still going to live or not, we are still going to be breathing or not, tak tahu lagi kan. So people will work at confronting this ambiguity, trying to explain all these uncertainties that they have in their life through apa? Through teori. So bila dia propose a theory, they can at least gauge what is going to happen in the future. So macam itulah macam kita buat prediction kan. So macam AI lah juga kan, dia predict kita punya kehidupan kan. So everyone has a theory to go about their everyday affairs. So theories basically generate expectation about the world. Yang lain-lain ni saja je lah, saja nak tulis, you boleh baca sendiri. So that is the importance of theory, not only in the context of accounting but in our everyday affairs as well kan. So kalau tengok kat sini ni lebih kepada social lah, walaupun you mungkin tak nampak kan gambar dia social life. Okay. So coming back to accounting, when we were to apply any theories that we have, next we are going to learn about the different theory, and mind you also this theory keep on evolving. Okay, some theory might be useful for some for a certain time period, but when we have development, when we have more scientific evidence, maybe the theory is no longer useful or no longer valid in the future. So it is an ever-changing process. So the theory is not going to be stagnant, but we do have our what we call as the mother of the theory or the father of the theory. So that is where the origin of certain theory comes from. Okay, so in accounting, the most important goal is to again provide a coherent, ya Allah, coherent set of logical principle that form the general frame of reference for the evaluation and development of accounting practice. We want to evaluate whether there are any gaps in our accounting practices, what else can be done, and as you know, our accounting practice also keep on changing kan. Kita punya accounting standard pun sentiasa berubah-ubah. So because of this lah, because of the use of the theory to help explain and to help refine the accounting practice that we have. Okay, so in the future, because of the complexity of the business environment, the complexity of the business world, with the introduction or the fully use of AI, for example, in our daily lives, then maybe we will have some accounting standards catering for the use of AI. Manalah kita tahu kan. So that is the use of the theory. So if we were to look at the role of accounting theory in the development of accounting profession, the profession itself, if you look at this figure or is this illustration, you can see that the underpinning theory in accounting is actually our nak tulis our conceptual framework. So that is the biggest underpinning theory in accounting. So you tengok kat sini accounting theory, the first that we have is our conceptual framework. So because conceptual framework lay down all these accounting principles, accounting concept, accounting assumptions, and dia kan general kan, tapi based on the principles developed or outlined in the conceptual framework, from there we were able to propose many different accounting techniques in order to help realize this accounting principle outlined in the accounting framework. Contohnya accounting principle, sorry minta maaf nak tulis, aduh. Kenapa lah? Tak apalah saya cakap je lah. Fed up lah saya.
Okay. Tolong accept je, ada yang nak masuk, tak boleh.
Tak boleh?
Mm-mm.
Saya rasa saya macam saya auto admit ya. Sekejap ya. Tak ada lah. Tak ada pun.
Sekejap doktor, sebab dia cakap kat saya dia tak boleh masuk. Dia dah masuk dah.
Sebab saya set untuk auto admit
Terima kasih doktor.
Okay. Ya Allah, saya geram lah you. Kenapa saya punya ni tak boleh tulis ni? Minta maaf lah ya mengganggu. Okay, sorry So in the stress. Okay. In the conceptual framework, tengok nak gulung kat lain, dia keluar kat lain kan. In the conceptual framework, it explain or it state about the principle. Let's say the matching principle or the matching concept. Okay. So, apa hal? Macam tak betul. Okay, so this is the principle that we want to achieve. Okay, because it's considered to be important in order to realize or in order to provide a fair and view presentation of the accounting data maybe. Okay, so with that we need to formulate the appropriate accounting techniques in order to fulfill this matching principle. Tak ke mana-mana saya conteng ni, minta maaf lah. So based on this technique, we develop some accounting standard, maybe gap or maybe some even more detailed accounting policy related to matching principle. Contohnya macam dalam goodwill for impairment. Impairment for goodwill. Terbalik-terbalik dah cakap bulan puasa ni kan. Impairment for goodwill. With that, we help to achieve the objective of that particular accounting principle, which is to realize the matching concept or the matching principle. Okay. Geraklah kau seorang kat situ. Okay, when formulating accounting theory, the basic idea is that we have two different approaches. Some people would call this as quantitative study, some people would call this as qualitative study. But overall, in general, people would view the approach from two mainstream, which is the deductive. Either you use the deductive approach in order to formulate the accounting theory, or you use the inductive approach to formulate the accounting theory. So if you can see from this illustration that I have, the deductive is when you reason or you hypothesize from the general statement to the specific statement, whereas for inductive is from the specific observation to a more general implication. So I have a video, okay, maybe because you get tired of listening to me, so maybe we can watch this video. This video is only just a minute, okay, 1 minit sahaja, that explain about the deductive and inductive concept or the deductive and inductive approach to accounting. So lepas daripada video ni nanti kita akan tengok how it applies in the accounting setting. Subhanallah. Maaf Sekejap.
You start from something.
Okay. Sorry lah saya sampai terpaksa buka kat sini pula. Tahu apa masalah dia. Okay.
You start from something general and draw a specific conclusion when it comes to deduction, whereas the reverse is valid for induction, with you starting with specific premises and drawing a general conclusion. Here's a simple example for deduction. 1. I start with something general and say that all my family members use money, and 2. I say something more specific, that John is a member of my family. From these two premises, I draw a specific conclusion, that John uses money. Let's move on to an induction example with me making the following specific statements. 1. My mother uses money. 2. My father uses money. 3. My brother uses money. 4. My sister uses money. From these specific premises, I draw the general conclusion that all my relatives use money, and the more examples of relatives who use money I think of, the more probable I consider my conclusion. Please understand.
Okay, saya interrupt sekejap. Okay, so you can see that the difference between deductive and inductive kan. So For deductive, you start with a general idea. Okay, all my family uses money, and then from there, you test whether all the family members, okay, or the members in your family uses money. See whether your mother, whether the idea applies to your mother, your father, your sister, your brother. So yang empat tadi tu, bila kita tengok the family members tu, itu kita panggil hypothesis. So the idea is general, but then we try to apply the general idea into different setting. Kan, father, mother, brother, sister, macam lagu finger lah pula kan. So you tengok sama ada dia applicable or not towards all the members of the family. That is deductive. Whereas for inductive is when you draw conclusion based on specific cases, which means that we have to observe individual cases, tengok whether our father use money, mother use money, brother use money, sister use money. So based on this observation, we try to connect what are the relationship between all these people. So we get the idea that these are all the family members. So with that, we draw our conclusion. So that is induction. Okay.
And that with deduction, your conclusion is certain if your premises are true. However, when it comes to induction, your conclusion is only probable if the premises are true, and the more premises there are, the more probable the conclusion becomes. What if my distant cousin Joe gets abducted by aliens and no longer uses money? In that case, as far as the deduction dimension is concerned, I now consider my conclusion false because my first premise has proven to be false, with Joe being the exception, which is enough to prove it false. When it comes to the induction dimension, however, all my four premises are still true if my conclusion is false. And right from the beginning, I've accepted this uncertainty.
Okay, buat lawak pula. Dia mengatakan dia punya cousin kena abduct dengan alien. So the conclusion or the premise does not hold true for both inductive and deductive approach. So that is the major difference. So kalau kita tengok tadi, samalah macam saya kata tadi. From general statement to specific statement, inductive is from specific observation to general implication. Okay. So if I were to compare, okay, I took this from the internet lah, banyak kan sebenarnya to do the comparison between deductive and inductive research or deductive and inductive approach. Okay, kenapa ada perkataan research dekat situ? Because that is how we develop theory. We cannot develop theory without without doing research. So that is sebab antara one of the characteristic of a good theory is for the theory to be evidence, kan? So it must be systematic and evidence. Okay, so if I were to look at the deductive research, I can see dah tak ada dah ni. Okay. I can see that it begins with a theory-driven hypothesis, and most of the time the theory is already there. Let's say I want to use positive accounting theory. Okay, somebody else has developed the theory. So what I do is that based on the premise, based on the assumptions that I have in the theory, I will then develop an assumption, and this assumption is called hypothesis. Okay. So let's say under the positive accounting theory, the idea is that all the information will all information in the market will be reflected in share price. Okay, so itu dia punya basic idea lah. So any information that you have in the market, then all this will be reflected in the share price. So the hypothesis is that if I were to disclose information regarding CSR, for example, then this information will be picked up by the shareholders or whoever that is interested in CSR, in that information, through the share price. So meaning to say that if the share price increase, then we can say that the information is favorable. If the share price decrease, then we can say that the information is unfavorable. So that is the hypothesis that I'm going to build. So I'm going to test this hypothesis whether it applies or not in Malaysia. Contohnya using certain sample of firm. Okay, jadi based on that, then I observe whether the hypothesis is correct or not. Sorry lah. Okay, I observe hypothesis correct or not correct. And then based on this, I will make confirmation about the theory. So that is deductive. So you start with an existing idea or theory. Whereas for inductive research is that you yourself want to build the theory or you yourself want to propose the theory. So you begins with a research question, okay, and the data collection of empirical data. Okay, sorry ya, bersepon ya. And then which this data is then tested to generate hypothesis and theory. So it works the other way around. So macam yang dalam video tadi kita tengok, we look at the observation. Okay, let's say our sample is all the, saya tak tulis apa-apa ni tapi dia keluar pula kat sini. Okay, the sample is all accounting students in UPSI. So I have a list of student, dalam kelas saya ada 90. Jadi saya tengok 90 orang ni, do you behave in the same way? Do you possess the same characteristic? Do you possess the same quality? Contohnya kan, I observe. So student A will get an A, student B will get an A, student C will get an A. So that is my observation. And based on that, I develop a pattern. I identify a pattern, and based on the pattern, I develop the proposition or I propose an idea, and that becomes a theory. So that is the difference between deductive and inductive research. So in that sense, I would say the inductive way or the inductive approach is much more difficult because it involves a lot of data collection, whereas for deductive approach you just want to confirm whether the theory is correct or not in different situation. So again, if I were to, ni pun saya ambil daripada internet, compare between the deductive and inductive. So Aristotle ni lah famous for deductive approach. So this is mostly used in quantitative study. You begin with theory, then goes to hypothesis, observe and confirm whether the theory is accepted or not, whether the theory can be verified. But for inductive approach, macam induction cooker lah kan, you start with observation. Contoh dia bagi Sherlock. Pluto pun sama. So it based on certain principle, it based on certain philosophy or whatever. They do some observation and then they recognize the pattern, and based on that they develop a theory. So it's more on the qualitative research. So qualitative ni contoh macam orang pergi interview. You want to conduct a research on why managers behave certain way when performing audit opinion, contohnya lah kan. So you interview accountant 1, accountant A, and then you interview accountant B, you interview accountant C, you interview accountant D. So basically sebenarnya banyak accountant you kena interview, bukan 4 saja kan, berpuluh-puluh, maybe even and then from their experience you observe, okay, and then you see the pattern, whether there is any tema, any themes from their professional judgment, and then based on that you propose a hypothesis and eventually a theory. So that is how an inductive approach works. So it's the other way around kan, at the end of a very different spectrum, inductive and deductive. So ini contohnya daripada buku mana saya ambil, saya tak ingat lah. Contoh in accounting, okay, an example, if we were to look at the nature of PPE, okay, so deductive approach tadi macam dalam video tadi kan, kita tengok kita punya premise adalah all asset accounts have debit balance. Okay, so we see that PPE account is an asset account, cash account is an asset account, it has debit balance dan sebagainya. Kita tengok, observe. So at the end of the day, our conclusion is that PPE account has a debit balance. So that is deductive. We deduce from our general principle. The general principle tu apa? General principle adalah all asset account have debit balance, and because PPE is an asset account, therefore it must has a debit balance. Okay, so inductive pula dia tengok satu-satu, one by one, all the asset account, because at the end of the day we want to conclude that all asset account has debit balance. So we observe all asset account to see whether they have debit balance or not. Which is, yelah of course lah kan, ini contoh yang sangatlah mudahnya kan. So kita tengoklah PPE, kita tengok intangible asset, long term investment account, cash and cash equivalent, apa-apalah lagi, semuanya kita tengok, we observe that all of them has debit balance. So with that we can conclude that asset account equals to debit balances. Okay, so that is inductive approach. Okay, so ramai orang dia tak suka inductive ni sebab dia banyak kerja lah. You kena observe satu-satu, lepas tu you kena identify dia punya pattern dia, data dia macam mana, how they connect dan sebagainya. Kadang-kadang mengambil masa yang sangat lama kan. So ini another example, you boleh tengok juga. For deductive, let's say in terms of measuring asset at net realizable value. Okay, so the first premise 1, premise adalah kita punya assumption, hypothesis, andaian adalah all accountants should prepare their firm's financial report to satisfy the information requirement of nak garis all users of the report. Kan? That is premise 1. All accountants should prepare financial report according to the needs of all users of the financial report. And then the second premise is that all users of financial report are concerned about what is their main concern? The main concern is the solvency of the reporting firms. So the conclusion is that all accountants should prepare the solvency of the reporting firm, because that is the information needed by all users of financial report. Okay, and then the next premise is that the solvency is determined by what? Is determined or indicated by the net realizable value of the asset. So what information then the accountants must disclose in their financial report? So all accountants must disclose or measure asset at net realizable value in their firm's financial report, because that is the information that is used to measure solvency, which is the information needed by all users of financial report. So that is deductive approach. Okay. So whereas for inductive approach, you tengoklah accountant firm A, B, C measure asset, accountant XYZ pun measure asset at net realizable value. So which means that all accountants measure asset at net realizable value in their firm's financial reports, which means that this is the kind of information that we need to have in our financial report. So that is the conclusion from the induction approach. Okay, so itu contoh yang sangat simple lah, sangat simple on how on what are the differences between inductive and deductive approach to the development or the formulation of accounting theory. Okay, so it really depends on which approach you would like to use. Okay, but I would say that a lot of the more a lot of the studies that is performed using positive accounting theory, they use deductive approach, whereas other studies that use different types of accounting theory, some of them can use inductive approach. Okay, it really depends on the situation. Okay, now after we have looked at the two types of approaches in order to formulate accounting theory, now we move on to the more boring part which is the development of accounting theory. Macam history lah kan. History ni memang bosan sikit, boleh berdengkur tengok benda ni. Okay, so if we were to look at the timeline of accounting theory, okay, the development of accounting theory, you can see here that it goes way back in the 1400, kan, 1400. Okay, but mind you that at that particular time there was no specific accounting theory yet. Sebab apa? Sebab okay, sorry saya kerat dekat situ. Okay, sebab at that particular time from before 14,000 up to 1,700, this is the crucial period whereby we just want to formalize accounting practice, which means that we want to build our accounting practice, we want to build our accounting standard, not accounting standard, accounting principle. So this is the period where accounting has just been recognized as a field of study. So because of the industrial revolution and whatnot, like what we have learned in chapter 1, kan. So with that, they just trying to establish accounting as a profession. Okay, they were just trying to formalize the practice, so that's why they have to come up with different accounting principle and whatnot. So there was no need to evaluate whether certain practice is okay or not, whether certain practice needs certain improvement or not, because that was not the objective at that particular time. So lantak lah kan, asalkan ada guidelines. So that was the main objective at that particular time. So tak kisah sangat pun berkaitan dengan accounting theory, lantak lah asalkan ada garis panduan kan. So pre-theory there was not much going on. 1919 dua kali aja ni. Okay. But the accounting was not being evaluated on a systematic basis. Asal ada je. So fast forward to 1800 is the period up to 1955 where people started to question. So because this is considered to be the general scientific period kan, people started to question whether certain accounting practice is correct or not. Because they have dah pandai, they made observation based on empirical observation. Empirical ni adalah scientific lah, sama lah. So kalau you dengar perkataan empirical study, maksudnya the study that is based on scientific data, but not necessarily science yang masuk makmal buat eksperimen apa semua tu kan. Social science pun scientist juga, but we use different set of data. Kan, mungkin kita gunakan survey, kita gunakan share price movement, but it's still considered as scientific data. So this is considered to be the period where people started to question the accuracy of certain accounting practice and what we can do to improve the accounting practice to a better level, to improve the quality of the accounting information. So they focus on the existing viewpoint of accounting and to help explain whether certain accounting practice can be refined or not. So dia dah mulalah dia punya orang kata bunga-bunga dia tu nak ke arah the establishment or the proposition of accounting theory. So after 19, lama juga kan, lama observe tu kan dekat berapa ratus tahun tu duk tengok je kan, empirical observation. So in 1956, along with the establishment of professional body, therefore the normative accounting theory or normative accounting period was born. So kenapa? Sebab apa? Sebab pada waktu itu kita ada accounting professional body kan. They want to suggest, they want to establish what are the good principles, what are the good principles, what are the do's and the don'ts in accounting practice. So they start to establish what they call as, they start to establish norms, and because of that this is known as normative accounting period or normative accounting. They establish the norms for the best practices. Allahu Akbar. Best accounting practices. So dia kata buat ini, this is the correct, most accurate way. So they focus on what should happen, the ideal world, instead of what is really happening lah, which is the reality. So macam kita lah juga kan, barang order, barang sampai. Kan? So barang order lain, barang sampai lain. Nak baju raya sekarang kan, tengok orang tu pakai, cantik je pakai. Yelah, dia cantik lah. Bila pakai daripada sendiri, hampir je. Kan? So what should happen is the ideal. So they propose the guideline of what is to be recognized as the best accounting practice. So that is normative accounting. They don't really care about what is really going on, the reality of it, whether people, where the company really use the accounting standards or the accounting practice that they propose. They don't really care. They just, okay, these are the things that you have to do. So in that sense, it is seen as a more of a, biar saya tulis dulu. Okay, so it is seen as a more prescriptive activity. They prescribe what to do. Okay, what are the things that company has to disclose in their annual report, because they think that these are the information that the shareholders would like to see. Okay, so the ideal. Okay, and because of that, a lot of things or a lot of initiatives has been done in order to better improve the accounting practice. For example, in terms of bukan in terms of ni lah, the focus is on the basis for the valuation of asset. So what is the best valuation of asset? Because they are saying that there have been a lot of criticism regarding the historical cost concept. Kan cost tolak accumulated depreciation. What does that really mean actually? So a lot of people are suggesting that asset should not be reported based on historical value, because depending on the type of asset, some asset decrease in value, some asset depreciate in value, some asset will increase in value. Kan? So historical cost is, although it is part of the conceptual framework punya accounting principle kan, a lot of people has been criticizing the use of historical cost in the valuation of asset. So daripada situlah they start timbul idea regarding fair value of asset, net realizable value, market value of asset, things like that. Okay. So sampai tahun 1970 is the era of what they call as a positive accounting theory or positive accounting period. So when then they shift to a new empiricism. Empiricism, susahnya nak sebut. Empiricism ni dia punya root word dia of course lah empirical tadi. Tak boleh tulis. Empirical, based on scientific evidence, based on financial modelling, based on statistical data. So masa tu dia panggil sebagai empiricism ataupun positive theory, whereby all these people come together. They want to provide a guideline. They want to explain accounting practice for what is really happening. Not the bukan macam yang ni the ideal ni, but the reality, what is being practiced now by the firms. So the practice will then being observed empirically. Okay, dah kata dah tadi, the objective is to explain about why things happen, and then with that they want to make prediction of what's going to happen in the future. Kan? So in that sense we can see that this is a better approach, because not only they are trying to prescribe the guideline, but they are trying to make sense of why firms are behaving in certain ways and what we can do to make it better, because based on this data we can now predict what they are going to do in the future. Kan? So in this sense, the positive accounting theory, one of the ni dia sebutkan sebagai descriptive. Okay, descriptive and predictive approach. Kat mana dia keluar ni? Dia keluar merata-rata you. Saya kena tengok balik dia punya setting later. Okay. So that is positive accounting theory. So I try to put the differences between positive and normative accounting theory. These are the two accounting theories that we are going to look at in detail later. Selepas ni tengok lagi apa perbezaannya. Tapi secara umumnya in general these are the main differences between the two types of accounting theory. The positive accounting theory explains and predicts the real world phenomena in which they use, as I mentioned, scientific data, statistical data, and they test the data to see the behavior of the data. Ada financial modelling dan sebagainya based on observed facts. So they consider themselves at that particular time as a scientist or social scientist. Okay, because they want to explain the accounting practice, okay, that has been used at that particular time, and then based on the practice they want them to predict what is going to happen in the future if we were to use the same practice or if we were to introduce different practice. Okay, so with that we have theory construction and theory verification. We verify. How we verify? We verify with facts. We verify by testing the facts or the data empirically. Whereas for the normative dia macam macam apa doktor lah. Sebab dia bagi prescription kan. Nah, kau sakit ya? Nak makan ni. Sakit apa? Sakit kepala. Nah, makan. Oh, paracetamol. Saya doktor tapi tak tahulah mana tu kan. Doktor faham sampah je. Sakit apa? Batuk. Okey dah batuk makan ubat batuk. Sakit apa? Sakit sendi. Nak makan ubat sendi. Kan? Ubat sendi pun panggil. Ubat apa? Entahlah orang tua-tua suka makan tu kan. Sakit-sakit sendi tu. So it's more on the prescription of what is to be the correct. Macam bos lah pula. Bossy lah kan? Mana ni? What is the correct? What is the supposed way? What is the best way? Tak keluar dah. Of accounting for an event. Okay. Usually it is quite biased because the prescription is based on the norms of or values or beliefs held by the researcher. Sebab apa? Sebab yang buat tu human being kan. Because they have different background, they have different value. Therefore, the value they impart on their suggestion. Sama macam kita, is just common sense kan. If you come to me and ask me about my advice, ask me for my advice about some problem that you have in your life, maybe your love problem, okay. So my advice, because I'm not a professional psychiatrist or professional counselor, my advice is going to be shaped by my own value. So and sometimes the advice is going to be biased as well. Kan? So sama juga macam dalam konteks accounting ni, bila orang tu yang bagi suggestion yang dia bagi tu akan berdasarkan apa dia punya pengalaman, apa dia punya nilai yang dia rasakan. Kalau nilai dia punya ethics adalah tinggi, dia kata okay, you tak boleh bagi this kind of information. You have to really scrutinize the information that you want to put in your annual report. Contohnya lah. Okay. So the objective is to justify some of the accounting practice. Ya Allahu Akbar. That ought to be adopted. Contoh new development of conceptual framework. So bukan bila I put this side to side, I'm not going to compare which is good, which is bad. It's just for because we need the conceptual framework as well. We cannot move on. Okay, there are not going to be any positive accounting research without conceptual framework. Okay, so conceptual framework tu kita punya garis panduan kita dalam bidang perakaunan kan. So but in terms of theory, if we were to consider normative accounting theory, there is no verification because we don't test the data, because they only come up with the instruction. Okay, we don't test the data unlike the positive accounting theory. Okay, so ni lagilah dia sama macam yang saya explainkan tadi, boleh tengok. Okay. And then in terms of what is the most recent, not most recent lah, this has been going on for 20-30 years ago actually. Okay, the academic and professional development accounting theory tended to take different approaches. So academician or academic researchers focus more on positive accounting theory, capital market, agency theory, behavioral aspect, which is using the positive approach. Whereas the profession, they just want to dictate, okay, they sought a more normative approach because that is their job. Their job is to provide guidelines, kan? Their job is to provide the standards. What are the things that companies, what are the things that we have to follow? So what accounting practice should be adopted? Jadi they are always arguing, okay, not seeing eye to eye because they have different objectives. But nowadays, they have come hand in hand together, okay, better. So the gap between the academic and the profession, not saying that the gap has closed. Okay, there are still gaps. Okay, just like industry and university, there are always gaps. But the good thing is that gaps are good, kan? Gaps are good. Mistakes are okay. Mistakes are good because it helps you to better yourself in the future, kan? So bukanlah kata nak close, nak tutup terus langsung tak ada gap, jadi semua jadi dungu je, kan? Jadi ikut je, follow je, kan? So that is not good. There always have to be gaps. Tapi how they are going to blend these two different approach together, because sometimes what happen now, I think the MASB and the IASB also has been keeping an open mind. Okay, they are inviting and they also offering a lot of grants for the research to be done empirically. So they will use this data, they will use this findings from the research in order to help them improve their accounting standards. But you have to bear in mind that accounting profession really need to dictate what accounting standards or what accounting practice should be adopted, because that is their job. Kalau dia tak buat tu, dia uhara lah begitu punya accounting profession. So bubak-bubak dah 1 jam. Okay, so I think we should take sebenarnya saya lah sebab saya tak nak bercakap. So maybe take a 10 minutes break and then we will come back and go for part 2. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. If you want to interrupt me, kejap saya stop presenting. Saya nampak ada titik kat situ. Itulah tak boleh masuk. Kenapa ya? Tapi saya rasa semua dah boleh dah kot. Ada 3 orang je tak boleh. Okay, so kalau ada lagi kawan tak boleh masuk, please let me know. Sebab bila present ni saya tak pandai sangat lah Google Meet ni pun. Dah lah lama dah tak guna kan. So adalah saya punya hiccup. Okay, but in